Good afternoon. It is September 5th, 2012, and as you can see, we are installing the motor back in the electric car. So what we've got here is this is the NetGain Warp 9 motor, and I've got the new brushes in there. That was one of the changes this summer, was to get the new brushes put on. We also have a brand new aluminum flywheel, which should be, make the thing lighter. I'm not sure exactly if that'll do anything that we'll notice, but it's a new flywheel. The old one was the old steel one was kind of ground sort of to a mirror finish, just from the clutch slipping on it, and so it was kind of time to do something different, either get that one refinished or replace it. And I figured since we're going through all the effort, we might as well go ahead and put the aluminum flywheel on. Now, this was supposed to be a spec Stage 3 Plus clutch kit, but since they sent me the wrong clutch disc that doesn't actually go onto my transmission, and we're getting close to the convention, I ended up ordering this SACHS brand off of rockauto.com. And it went right on there like nothing, and will slide right into the transmission without a problem. Right now it has the alignment tool. This is the plastic alignment tool, which is just like the one that came with the spec one, and also with the old Beck Arnelli clutch kit that I had. And it just goes in there, make sure that disc is centered within the pressure plate when you're screwing the pressure plate down. So just like before, I ended up putting in each one of these bolts kind of in a star pattern and tightening them down. They all do have the thread locker blue on it, which is just enough to give it a little extra to hold, and there's an enormous amount of pressure on this thing. And again, just as a review, basic how clutches work 101. There's this throwout bearing that goes onto the forks of the transmission, which is right here. And when you press your foot on the clutch pedal, it causes this to move out and compress to push on those little fingers on the pressure plate, which are right here, these little fingers here. And so that results in the pressure with the spring action being released from that clutch disc and allowing it to spin freely. So anyway, that's the basic functioning of the clutch, and we're ready to install this unit now in the car. So basically all that entails is we've got this nice engine hoist here that has come in very handy, and I'm just going to lower that motor on down in there, and get it lined up with the transmission, kind of slide it on. It's sort of tricky because you got to get it onto that input shaft, but you just kind of keep futzing with it, raise or lower the jack holding up the transmission, raise and lower this hoist, and until you finally got it lined up perfectly. Then you toss the bolts in through these holes here, and those bolts go through, so we get a shot of it, like into the transmission right here, and so that just makes it all line up and holds in there very securely. Then we'll throw on the other side. This is the tail shaft motor mount, and that will basically just support the motor securely. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and get the motor lowered down in there, and then I'll get back to you when I'm putting in the bolts and so forth. So be right back. Alright, with just a couple minutes of careful futzing, I lowered the motor down in there, twisted it around, jacked up the transmission a little bit higher, lowered the motor a little bit more, raised the motor a little bit, whatever it is, until I found the sweet spot where it just slid right onto that clutch disc. So I know I hit the mark because it slides right in easily, and the clutch now no longer is able to be moved just by pulling up and down on this, because there's enough pressure on it. I could probably get in the car and press on the clutch, and that would cause the whole motor to kind of push out that way. Yeah, so there's no bolts holding in yet. But all we're going to do is put a bunch of bolts through here all the way around. We have the front motor mount goes right into this bracket right here. So the front motor mount goes in here and then bolts into there and here, and then actually holds both the transmission and the motor, from the front. And then of course we need the motor mount on the left hand side, which is that big metal plate that I showed you in an earlier video. So anyway, I'm going to get those bolts put in and get the motor mount mounted, and I'll be right back. Okay, it's been about an hour or so since we last took up the filming. So the motor is now completely mounted back in the car, and it's all bolted up securely to the transmission, as you can see on these the bolts right there, and they go all the way around the circumference of the transmission, and just hold it super securely between the motor and the transmission. Then we've got this front motor mount, which I had painted just to make sure that it's all nice and rust-free and hammered black, Rust-Oleum. And so on this side we have the tail shaft motor mount, and so that's just all bolted back in there. The 4 bolts that actually hold this to the motor down here, those are held in with Nordlock washers, and to prevent any vibration shaking them loose and so forth. And that little ring that you see on the end of the tail shaft is the original magnetic pickup ring for the net gain controls. I don't know, the warp speed sensor. Anyway, that one. But which was giving me a lot of noise and problems before, so I'm going to be swapping that out with a proximity-based sensor that both Avnetics and Jack and EVTV recommended. And so what I've done is I mounted that proximity sensor in the same ring that the warp speed sensor was in. I'm going to mount it right on the end there, and wire it up, and hopefully have a reliable RPM gauge. That'd be very nice. So not strictly necessary for the operation of the car, because the Warp 9 uses that sensor input to limit the power to the motor if necessary, but if it gets over 5,000 RPMs or wherever you're into the danger zone for the motor. But as long as you use some common sense and don't spin the motor up as fast as it'll possibly go without it in gear, it's really not that big of a deal. But I would like to have it because I like having my tach readout on the dashboard, and I like having the Soliton actually know what's going on with the speed of the motor. So we'll get that all set up. So anyway, that's everything mounted back in the engine compartment here, and we're going to get the battery box in and a bunch of wiring, all the high voltage shelf and so forth, and then we'll be pretty much done up here. Kind of amazing how quickly it goes together when you have the right parts. So we do have the new SACHS clutch kit in there, and hopefully that'll hold and be at least as good as the Beck Arnelli one that I had in there before, or Beck Arnley rather. And then someday, if Spec ever gets the right clutch to me, then we'll maybe swap it out and put that one in. We'll see. Anyway, so the other thing that we got going on here is the Soliton 1 has been remounted into its home there, and like so. And so that's very secure. I'll try to get a shot of this underneath, which is extremely tricky.
especially with the sun and so forth. But yep, so there's the Soliton 1, and you know, it's roughly where the radiator used to be, a little bit in front of it technically. But anyway, so those leads on the far right side is the power going out to the motor, the red and black, and that just gets wired right there to the two terminals on the bottom of the motor, which is, you know, positive and negative. So that's it for the wiring to the motor. I'm going to do some more testing to see if I can find that frame leak that I had run into earlier. It was reporting it, I was detecting it on the Soliton, but the Soliton was actually connected to the motor at the time. So it's entirely possible that the frame leak was being caused within the motor itself, and then the Soliton was just picking it up. I had talked to Jeffrey Jenkins at Avnetics via email, and he had let me know that the inside the Soliton, the black connections on the left there, the battery input, and then the motor output on the right, those are the two that are broken by the contactor. Like, it has two contactors in there that make sure that the electricity does not flow. However, the red side goes all the way through. It's just like a straight shot, and that means that if we have a frame leak within the motor, it could still pass through the Soliton on that red, you know, on the positive, and look like the frame leak might be coming from the Soliton. So anyway, it's highly likely that the frame leak isn't inside the motor. I did just replace the brushes with those new Hellwig split trap brushes, so they've been seating themselves all the time that I've been driving the car, you know, for a month or two. And it's quite possible that there's a whole lot of carbon dust buildup inside the motor, and we just need to blow that out of there with a compressed air or something. So anyway, sounds like I have a phone call, so I gotta go, but I will catch up with y'all later, and hopefully we'll have some more progress.
Okay, so now we have the front battery box reinstalled. It's all nice and secure and solidly put in there. And I just wanted to point out kind of a process improvement that I've made after pulling this box in and out of here so many times. As you can see in the front, and I'm not sure if the sun's going to wash it out or not, but this beam here is attached to the box, and it just sets down on top of this other beam, and then just gets bolted in. So that holds it in extremely strong on the front. Well, in the back, we had the same kind of situation. However, what had happened was that this back angle piece went underneath the sheet metal. And so you kind of had to angle it down and put it in sort of after the box was in place, and you couldn't put these bolts in, and it was just a big hassle. So what I ended up doing was I just cut the sheet metal a little bit and folded it back on top of itself here, and then painted it hammered black. And so now this entire piece can just be lowered in straight from the top, and there's no, you know, just no issue there. It doesn't catch on anything. So anyway, that's kind of a minor thing, but boy, it sure does make it a lot easier to get this box in and out of here. And then once we put everything back down in place, we kind of have this weather seal that was, you know, just originally there to keep the water out of the engine compartment that would come down, you know, up in this area. And so that kind of folds over right on top of all that and just works out perfectly. So anyway, that is the front battery box, and so we're in and ready for the blue foam insulation to be reinstalled, and then we'll put the you know, the batteries back in and get them wired up and go from there. Just wanted to point out, clearance wise, as you can see, we have clearance at the top of those bolts. You know, I can put a finger in here, finger width anyway, and between where the box is and the transmission. So as the transmission's bouncing along, we shouldn't get anything touching. And then similarly on this side, we have the motor mount, and this side of the box clears it by a pretty good amount. I can put my hand in there a little bit, and so there's not going to be any rubbing of the battery box on the motor, in the mount and so forth. So that's it for the front battery box. Now we're going to move to the mid battery box, and I'm going to show you what that's all about. It's really an ugly thing to try to catch on film. There's not a lot of room, but I'll see what I can do. Be right back. Alright, as previously noted, this is a very difficult thing to shoot on film, but I'm doing the best I can with what I got to work with. So what we're looking at is the underside of the car, where the mid battery box is going to go, right behind the rear footwells. So these are the footwells for the rear seats, and right above us is where the rear seats go. And so it's a really odd angle, so what we've done is created the battery box here, and as you can see, the curvature of the box roughly mimics the bottom of the car. And so the idea is that it's going to go up in, like right there. On the other side, so it's a little flat part, and then it's a curve, and it goes way up into the wheel well, and that kind of mirrors what the foam does, the black foam on the side here. So anyway, we're going to go ahead and get that raised up in there, and it's kind of tricky to do, especially for one person, but I'm going to do what I can, and hopefully I can make it fit. And anyway, I'll be right back, hopefully with a fully installed battery box. Okay then, that took a lot longer than anticipated. Ended up being quite a bit of futzing around to get the box up in there. I had to end up using a jack to hold up one edge of the box while I was trying to get the bolts in, and it was pretty much just a nightmare. But anyway, got it up in there, and it's extremely secure. That box is not coming out of there ever if I can help it. So anyway, you can kind of see up in there, it's very difficult how the black Gorilla Tape just kind of on that foam seals it up against the top of the car very well, and the little bit that isn't sealed we're going to be able to caulk and just kind of finish that up. So anyway, I just wanted to point out this the channel at the front here is left open intentionally so that we can service the brake line. You can see the little brake line right here and how it goes up right along that space. So I still wanted that to be accessible, and you can get to that even with the box in here, so that's a cool thing. I'm going to try to get the camera up in here without making everyone sick. Move the camera, but you can see that we have the holes up in there in that channel. That's where the cables are going to go up to the front of the car. You can see the power steering pump up there, and just along this space where the exhaust pipe used to go, right into the new shiny battery box. So anyway, that's again mounted in there very securely. Height wise, if we just kind of follow along the edge of the car here, we can see that these support pieces do stick down farther, or actually about the same distance as the battery box in the back. So I don't think we're going to have any trouble with it hitting on anything. It is very close to the axle, so that's with the pivot point of the tires, and it's in the center of the car. It's just not going to give us any trouble. It really isn't that low. So anyway, that's what the box looks like from underneath. And you can see it goes right up to the axle. I'm not sure if I'll be able to get a good shot of this here, but so yeah, that's the axle there, and the box goes right up next to it. The bolts kind of touch it a little bit, And then as the axle bounces up and down, I'm sure it'll wear those bolts off quite nicely. But I'm not really worried about it. There are other bolts on the sides that actually hold the structure of the box. The ones in the back are kind of extra. And yeah, so anyway, it should be fine. And will hopefully not be too obnoxious while it's wearing that in. But anyway, so that's the box from underneath, and I'm going to reposition the camera and the lighting and so forth, and we'll take a look at what it looks like from the top. Okay, so here we are inside the car. We're looking at the hole on the top, and we can kind of see the top edge of the battery box there. So this is the the rear battery box with all the cables piled up on top still. And this is where the rear seats go, is into these two divots. So what we can see here is that the NEMA 14-50 plug for the Manzanita that runs out to the gas filler hole outside. Basically, it's just like the you flip open the gas cap and you see the Marine Co. 3-prong plug there that's designed for 50 amps. That comes in and is routed in behind, kind of right above the axle now, and then ends up right here. So this is now in the weatherproof container of the battery box, and I'm not really sure if I can get a good shot of this, but we can now access the batteries. So we have 4 of the Calb cells down in there, and we can get at all their terminals fairly easily. I mean, obviously there's a little standing on your head involved, but those will be accessible for measuring and doing any bottom balancing or anything that needs to happen. So that gets the last 4 batteries in the car. After we get those 26 up front, we'll be and of course the 30 that are still in this back battery box, that'll be our 60 batteries. So anyway, that's all I have for tonight. It's getting late and I need to get to bed, but I'm going to try getting the batteries in the front battery box installed tomorrow, and then get all these wires hooked up. We're going to have to run one of these leads. I'm thinking probably the negative, from pack negative there, it'll go down into the box onto the positive side, the far positive there, and then these will be strapped together, and then we'll have the negative side from there going up the channel, which is roughly right underneath this piece here. It goes right up front to the front battery box, and then the other positive lead that's here, right under there, comes out here, and so this cable will go straight on, down through and up to the front battery box. So that'll complete the circuit, kind of splicing those 4 new batteries right in there. So anyway, that's what I got, and I will catch up with y'all tomorrow with more updates on the electric vehicle. Take care and have a good night.